I've been thinking about PS1 games. I guess any game around that generation. More in particular, the way those games looked. There was a special style there. Maybe I've been thinking more of the later games in the generation. I really like the colorful, sharp, low poly look some of those games had. Even if I mostly played the earlier, more grainy ones. But it was these older ones that seemed to be remembered more. Although it'd be wrong to say that the aesthetic of the PS1 can only look a certain way. After all, this was the age of experimentation. Games could go from looking like this, to this, to this, and that's just the 3D games. But I think there's something special when people can look at a modern game and say it looks like a PS1 game. Like, I think it goes to show how memorable those games were, how distinct they were. Something about the fonts, the low poly models, the texture warping. Yeah, it was there only for limitations, but that's what made it stylish. The flaws made it unique. Think about stuff like why older games like Super Nintendo games had unique and memorable music. They had to use specific samples and they didn't have the space for many. This created a refined, highly concentrated style for each game. You can probably name the game a certain song came from just from listening to the first 2 seconds of it with these kinds of games. I remember growing up, moving far past the SNES era, only to see in the future games purposefully recreating those limitations. I didn't know what an indie game was, so I saw these games and I thought it was so interesting that they would move back to replicate a style made from limitations. I guess something like Mutant Mudds comes to mind. It was an age of devs who grew up on retro games wanting to go back to those days and recreate this stuff. Simple stuff like pixel 2D platformers with little story and no voice acting. As games advance farther nowadays, I feel like we've recently seen a trend similar to this, but with people who grew up liking the PS1 low poly look and wanting to make a game styled like that. I mean, it's been a thing before, but I feel like I see it more than ever now. But truthfully, perhaps it's because I've never purposely seeked out such a thing. I think it's the PS1 haunted demo discs that caught mine and many others' eye. Y'all remember demo discs? I had a PlayStation Underground disc myself. It was really cool to play short bursts of all these different games to see if you liked them, and for poor people like me, I replayed these demos over and over because it was all I had. I remember finally getting my hands on Legend of Dragoon and being blown back, like there's more to this game than just the demo area. It kind of felt surreal, like the earliest form of playing a game beta, only to then play the full release. It also made me quite a fan of games that I likely wouldn't even know about nowadays, like Hot Shots Golf or Ori no Riori, so I guess it did work in some ways. Obviously back then, you couldn't really see what a game looked like or played like, so being able to get a hands-on experience is pretty sick. Nowadays, it's a lot different. You can just download early versions of games or watch videos of games. In fact, most of the time, you're going to see what a game looks and plays like before even thinking about buying it. But to put a disc in and see a bunch of random games you know nothing about? How exciting! And that's what this little horror disc hopes to capture. A collection of random PS1 looking games with a horror aesthetic. I suppose it was successful enough to catch my wind, and enough that there's a new demo disc that's out now too for 2021, alongside an advent calendar special just for these types of games made earlier in December. But I'm not here to talk about the whole disc, just a certain game on it, that in fact was just a demo at the time of the release of the 2020 disc. So today, I'm gonna tell you about... Oh. Spacey, why aren't you reading the name of the... Oh. Yeah. Oh. I don't know how to pronounce this. Fatum Betula? Fatum Betula? Fatum Betula? I don't know. It's Latin for Fate Birch, which is a pretty dope name for a game. Combining our context thus far, this is indeed a horror game in the style of a PS1 game. And let me tell you, Retro low poly games pull off horror so much better than modern horror. Sure, there's gonna be people who just look at this stuff and laugh, but if you come in knowing that this is a horror game, it's hard to tell what things are, so your mind fills in the blanks and it makes not so scary things a lot more scary than heavily detailed stuff you see nowadays where you just look at it and it's like, whoa, look at all the detail. Starting the game out, I'm already scared because of the epileptic warning, but luckily that dangerous stuff can be turned off for the most part. Although for some reason that setting doesn't get saved, and booting up the game will still have those visuals on by default, so be aware. I really like this logo here. Always missed when games had 3D model logos that would move around and stuff before starting the game. It's fun. The game begins with us staring at this chapel-like building with this calming music playing. We climb up the stairs and you may be wondering why the screen is black right now. Yeah, this is about where I quit when I tried to play this game at night. You know how I am with these kinds of games. Anyways, the next day, actually moving on. We go up and we find a birch tree in this long hallway. Staring into the void long enough brings forth this cool dude. I'm pretty sure if you look away or back off, they'll leave too, which I think is pretty funny because most people would be afraid of this. Hey buddy, what's up? They tell you that this birch tree and the world are one of the same. The water currently holds the tree in a state of limbo, and if it were to be altered, so too would the world change as well. The creature then gives us 3 flasks, giving us the power to alter the water and life of this birch tree, alongside the world itself. And we set off to do just that. I gotta say, this game really hits it with the visuals. This looks like something I'd play on PS1. If you want to know what I mean by style, I mean stuff like the pause menu or the loading screen. Stuff like that heavily gives me those vibes. It's not just the normal graphics. Because if you didn't know, disc-based games back then had a heavy amount of loading. I always had enjoyed walking around worlds like these. Something about this look, like, this is a lot more pretty and artistic to me than modern AAA games. That must sound crazy, right? It's very peaceful all in all. Yeah, there's some funky looking dudes out and about, and I got pretty unsettled at some points, but I don't know, I just felt pretty chill. I just like the atmosphere. There aren't a ton of areas in this game, but every area has such a distinct and very memorable design to it. With the setup in mind, you basically go around helping out random people who will offer you a liquid of some kind. You can hold up to 3 different liquids in your inventory, alongside other items that will help you out. These liquids can be placed in bodies of water, or any liquid, replacing the previous liquid, although there are a few liquids that can't be overwritten by another. So these liquids have some different properties, and they can be used to solve certain puzzles. But you could also just use them on the birch tree at the beginning of the game and finish the game. Yeah, you can beat this game extremely fast, but that's the thing. There's an ending for each liquid besides water. So there's a ton of different endings, and while some of them may be easy to get, others will require you to progress farther in the game using other liquids to help you solve puzzles and go to new areas, or combining them to form new liquids entirely. And even if you don't get any sort of progress or ending, you can still use these liquids to see special events. There's a lot of experimenting here, using your logic with what the game gives you to change areas around. But I'll be honest, I did get stuck at a few things. Like, I didn't realize how to find the beach area for an embarrassingly long time, but it was really cool when I did. The sense of discovery here is really fun. Although then we get to scenarios like this cool looking person who wants the skull of an immortal person. So then I find the immortal person, hey buddy, what's up? And they want me to kill them, so I say, alright, let's get to work, and I start shopping. But that wasn't the solution, and no matter how hard I tried, and trust me, I tried, that's not what you're supposed to do. You're gonna get lost quite a bit, but when you do figure it out, it's really cool, which is why I'm trying not to spoil much. And if at some point you do give up and start getting bored, just look up an ending guide. Try not to spoil everything, just let it help you out with the next step and then see if you can do the rest on your own. All I'm saying is that ending 9 is some playground rumor kind of stuff with what you have to do to get it. It must have been really fun for people to come together to try and figure this stuff out. But most of this game isn't super cryptic nonsense, so don't worry. Also, this raccoon guy, I like this guy. Wowie. One helpful thing is how open this game is. Sure, I didn't know how to help the person wanting the immortal person's skull, but I could still go around and do other things and get other endings, get other liquids from doing other quests. It's pretty non-linear. I guess the one thing I'd like to see from this game, because I really like the concept of this person walking around and exploring using substances from their flask, is that I wish there were more liquids that would affect things like movement. Like maybe you need to go somewhere high, so you would create a certain liquid that lets you bounce. Or this part here, I wanted to cross the river, so I figured I would need some sort of liquid to solidify the river, allowing me to walk across. I don't know, I think that'd be pretty neat. Something cool about a game where you're just able to explore more with your knowledge. Maybe you purposely walk around with certain vials just in case you need a certain vial for a certain situation. Compare that to exploring around and getting new magical powers to help you progress in most games. I think something like this would be a lot cooler and more unique. But what's here does work. Most liquids have their moments to use them and areas that they can affect. They are all important. But I would like to see more effects and more combinations. Okay, so I guess I want to talk about my thoughts on some of the endings and maybe overall themes of the game. So here you go, spoiler warning, if you know, you know, okay? Okay. So, funny enough, I didn't actually know you could just put anything into the birch water. So the first one I ended up putting in was the bone water, liquid bone, which gave me the skeleton ending, which speaks for itself, I suppose. There's about 10 different endings, all illustrating what happens to the world with the liquid you feed the birch tree with. Some of these are pretty interesting, like the talks about the ideas of immortality and death. I guess if I can view it as anything, it's just ideas, people's views on the world. Like the person who thinks immortality is amazing, thinking it'd be best if everyone could live forever, or to turn the world into a lawless, violent land where every conflict ends in death by feeding the birch tree blood of someone you murdered. All reflections on what would happen if one person had the power to change the world. Almost to the point where I feel like maybe the birch tree would have been best if not messed with at all. I'd say the exception to this is what I would consider the true ending, involving the learning of the truth of this world, which I find to be so fascinating, and what the message is here. Although I do wish the moon in this ending didn't move so fast. I'm slowing it down here because it actually kind of murdered my eyes. So yeah, I know this isn't the deepest analysis, but on the other hand, I don't think it's entirely that deep. But it is pretty interesting. I also really enjoyed the secret ending. You have to edit your save file to get it, and as someone who plans on making a game with 3D models and such far into the future, I love this stuff. I always love hearing devs talk about the game and moving around talking about random aspects, especially once you've already beaten the game and done everything. That just makes things more interesting. Alright, spoilers over. I honestly don't have a lot to say about this game, which might be a good thing. My videos have been too long as of late, but I enjoyed this game. It was such a fresh and unique experience. The visuals really sold me. It's a pretty small game, but what's impressive is that even though there aren't a massive amount of areas to travel to, I still clocked nearly 2 hours just going around experimenting and getting all the endings. And that was with me having to look at least half of the other endings. It could be potentially longer for you. And I guess that sounds pretty short, but I don't know. There are games out there that are like 20 hours long with so much filler that only about 2 hours of it is meaningful. I like this game. For my lack of searching for these kinds of games, I'm really into the PS1 exploration. No real story or anything, just explore the area and do things. You'll meet some people, sure, but you're basically free to go wherever. Although I guess in the end, it's ultimately your choice if you want to play this. I'll mention this now, but I want to say thank you to the creator, Bryce, for actually giving me this game. I didn't want to mention this earlier because I didn't want this to seem like some sort of sponsored, forced against my will to look at this game sort of video, because it wasn't. Like, the dude gave me the code for the game back in 2020, in which I had no plans of looking at it. But I just did it now because, well, I was thinking about PS1 games. They didn't request me to look at the game either. The true reason that Bryce messaged me was to tell me about an RPG Maker horror game being made known as An Outcry. It seems pretty intense and will probably make me feel uncomfortable considering the subject matter, but it should be interesting. I'll see if I can peep it when the time comes out, but you know, no promises. A demo of it was funnily enough featured on the 2021 PS1 Haunted demo disc, which also happens to include the next game Bryce is working on. Neat. But you know how I am, I'll say I'll look at it, this game or that game, and then proceed to do that like a year later. I'd like to think we might be in the age of a PS1 revival. It's the new hip retro throwback, but maybe it's always been here. As I said before, there have been devs who have been doing this type of game for a while now, and maybe these haunted PS1 discs aren't as big as I thought, but I'm sure they've gotten people into the making of these kinds of games. I don't know, man. I don't really try to care about popularity and what other people think. This is all just conjecture from a dumb old monster. But I'm glad I've gotten a taste of this wave. Truthfully, all these games are different and unique from one another, just like they were back in the day on my PS1. Links in the description as always. I recommend you check these games out, including Fatum Betula, of course. You may never play a more exhilarating game about watering a tree. I'm out of here. In screen, Spacey, I can't believe it. You think you can get away uploading a video this short? Yeah, I can. I need something sweet and simple after I dropped the last game I was making a video on. Unrelated to absolutely anything, but I've been listening to Petriform. They have like ska, pop punk chiptune music with vocoder lyrics, and it's like, this is it, man. This is the chiptune I jam with. The me kind of music. I need to start making ska chiptune for bot sound on the double. So yeah, I hope you guys don't really mind shorter uploads. I mean, I don't really give a dick. I say what I say on a game. I'm not gonna waste your time with pointless filler. I mean, I guess that's what my videos mostly are anyways. You know what? We're done here. Goodbye.